Hello and welcome back to another Rust video. Today we have another quiz. At least that's what it looks like. It's a quiz about strings. This is perfect because just the previous video was about strings, so hopefully we can use this quiz to kind of solidify what we've learned. So let's have a look at what's going on. As always, I've already executed rustling's watch inside of the rustling's repository, and we see here that we have a compilation error in exercises quiz2.rs, and obviously there's some expression here that seems somewhat broken. Bunch of question marks there, so we probably have to fill something in there. Let's open up that file. So I'm gonna open up exercises and then quiz2.rs. Okay, and then it says, okay, here are a bunch of values. Some of them are strings, some of them are string slices. Your task is to call one of these two functions on each value depending on what you think each value is. That is, at either string slice or string before the parentheses on each line. If you're right, it will compile. Okay, and then we see here we have a function string slice, which takes an argument that is indeed a string slice and it prints it out. And then we have a function string that does the same thing, but it takes a string instead of a string slice. And then on here we see a bunch of function calls that need to be filled in. That's all the question marks here. We have to replace those with either string or string slice. Okay, let's have a look. So the first one for sure is a string slice. We know that because it's a hard-coded string literal inside of the program. So we don't actually create a string and store some data in there. The string is coded into the program and has some memory reserved for it. So that's a static string literal, which is always a string slice. Then the next one is string slice red.toString. The method already tells us this is indeed a string. And then we have string from and then string hi. That's also obviously a string because we're creating a string type from the given string slice. Now the next one is interesting. Rust is fun toOwned. This one is also a string, and we haven't seen this one before. It turns out that toOwned is an API on the string slice, which obviously makes the borrowed value, which a string slice is, to an owned value. And the owned version of a string slice is a string. So this one also creates a string. Now at this point you might be wondering, why would you want to use toOwned over toString if both of these methods do the same thing? Well, in this case, it's actually really more a matter of semantic preference, I guess, because these two APIs are even performance-wise exactly the same. This wasn't always the case. There was a time where toOwned was preferred because it was a more explicit method and a more performant method to turn a string slice into a string, while the toString method was more of a generic API that takes possibly multiple different types and can turn them into a string. So toString needed to do a bit more work, which is why you would prefer toOwned in that case. But that doesn't apply anymore. Nowadays, toString and toOwned are really pretty much the same, so it's more of a semantic difference. Okay, and then we have into. Into is another one that we haven't seen before. This is interesting. Into is a method implemented from a trait, and we also haven't talked about traits yet, but I'm going to do that in a future video. It's kind of like an interface that says, okay, whatever thing implements that interface, that trait, it has to implement an into method. And this particular into method here on that string slice actually turns a string slice into a string as well. So we know this one is gonna be a string. Okay, and then we have a format macro, which takes two strings here. And this is also returning a string indeed. As a matter of fact, this is probably one of the easier ways to take two different strings or string slices and put them together, concatenate them, and create a new string out of that if you need a string type. Okay, so the next one, we have a reference to a string, which we then access just a part of it. So that for sure is a string slice. So I'm gonna write string slice here. Then a string slice dot trim. This is gonna return a string slice as well, because we're really just taking the slice and trimming it. Then the next one, we have a string we call .toString on it, and then we replace Monday with Tuesday. This is also gonna be a string. And last but not least, we have some string to lowercase, and this is gonna be a string because we are essentially taking the value we have and we want to modify it, and we can't modify borrowed values, which is what this string literal here is. So this is gonna be a string. Okay, saving that, and yay, everything is perfectly compiling. Okay, that was already it with this video, a little quiz that solidifies our knowledge about strings in Rust. And yeah, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to get notified when I publish new videos. Thanks for tuning in.